Welcome back. Well, we're going to go ahead and get some reactions for the just concluded, well, yes, Ekiti elections, because INEC has since declared the winner. Of course, there are more perspectives to that. So we've got three gentlemen joining us this morning to give us their perspective on what they think transpired for the elections. Ben Oguntunashe, he joins us from Ekiti. He is the chairman strategy committee for Shegun campaign. We also have Honorable Taiwo Olatubosu, director media and publicity, BO campaign. He's a former deputy speaker of Ekiti State. And then you see Ariyo Dare Atoye, who is the executive director, Adopt a Goal Initiative, also joining us from Ekiti. He was part of those who were observing the election. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Mr. Oguntunashe, let me start with you. Yes, we've seen several headlines about what your candidate is going to do or has said or done about the just concluded elections, but let's start from you giving us your impression about how the elections played out. What do you think?
Well, I think, good morning, Shambalin. What I take of the election is that it was not free, it was not fair, and we witnessed a horrendous collapse of our institutions. The two institutions charged with managing the election, I'm talking of INEC and the security agencies, they all failed. They were seriously compromised. And what we witnessed was an electoral bazaar, so commercialized that it does not reflect the real attitude of the Ekiti people. The election was very, very bad. There was also a lot of violence that accompanied the election. And I just wonder, why do we need to deploy such a large contingent of policemen and security agencies if they cannot hold down violence when it is occurring right in their presence? Vote buying is a criminal offense. When they see that, you even caught them. They were very lackadaisical in their attitude towards it. They never really cared. So what was the need for their presence? And then INEC positioned their boxes and all their equipment in a way that totally compromised the election. This election that just took place in Ekiti State lacked integrity.
Could you give us specifics as to some of these generic scenarios that you have painted? Any particular case in point?
All right, we'll begin. How much money did all the police officers that came for the election, how much did they collect? The DIG, we know how much he was given as his allowance for coming to do election. Why should the police, the DIG, or the police, the AIGs and so, why should they receive money from parties when they are coming to do what was clearly the official duties? That is the start of corruption to begin with.
Do you have it on good authority? Did you see any of the AIGs and who gave them what? Which party gave who what?
We produce that in court. I don't want to say it on air. We do have it on authority. But if you don't, I don't want to. I will not produce the evidence here, but you find out about the evidence much later. What about a guy called Mekilo in Ekiti, who was raiding houses, raiding everywhere, carrying ballot boxes all over the place? What about all the videos that are in circulation about people alleging vote buying and other things like that? There's a lot of evidence to show that this election was a charade.
All right, Honorable Olatubosu, what do you think?
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. My thinking and position on the issue of the last Saturday election was that the election went free, fair, and was credible enough, and it actually reflects the popular opinion of the people of Ekiti, the electorates. And in performing their franchise, they freely expressed that in support of the candidate that they believe we make them proud and we deliver the goods. And don't forget that the sterling quality of the party in government led by JKF is a factor in this case. And by that popular voting for APC and Bao as our candidate has given a good verdict of the acceptability of the leadership of APC, particularly in the area of good governance and outstanding performance in the area of infrastructure. But I listened to what Big Ben is saying here. My own is that if they are coming with face-saving excuses now, I am not surprised. I'm not surprised in the sense that you cannot expect an emergency assemblage of people within a period of 2-3 weeks or 1 month to come around and believe that they will be the one to determine what the people of Ekiti will do with their votes. And I don't know where they're getting this overbloated idea of their strength, and that is making them that they are as popular as the APC in Ekiti State. But let me expressly say that I do not witness any vote buying anywhere, and it is alleging that the onus of proof is on him. And we are here to let people know that Ekiti people, they are enlightened, they are knowledgeable, and they know the process of election, and they understand the dictates of the rules of the game. And I believe we should respect them by not taking them for granted and by not disparaging or taking their intelligence for granted on the media. And being an elderly person, I expect that Big Ben should come with facts and figures.
All right.
Just like you asked him now. It is surprising that I could not even mention specifics, because he's saying that they will have to present that in the court of law. Well, the process allows for that. And I think it's a good thing if they have to meet us in court.
All right, then. So, Dari, what did you see?
Good morning, Chamberlain, and thank you for having me. I would say that I think the election was an improvement on what we saw in Anambra State, especially with the issue of technology, the beavers recording significant improvement. I will also acknowledge the fact that this election witnessed a scandalous level of vote buying. It is not a report that people who have to hear from me alone. When you look at the media, I watch with incidents, including people who even shamelessly displaying their photographs and videos, acknowledging the fact that indeed they got money for selling their votes. In addition to that, we also must acknowledge the reported cases of violence in some places. For instance, in my local government, I'm from Ekiti State, I also voted and observed. You saw that, for instance, in Elawe, Ekiti, I think a reported case of a ballot box being snatched away. Now, overall, that's a difference in entirely whether those cases are sufficient enough to undermine the credibility of the election. It's another thing that will definitely be evaluated in days ahead. But I would like to say this. I think what we saw before this election and on election day usually attributed to the desperation of the politicians. And, there is always an attempt to win at all costs. And we saw that the pre-election violence, even though we know we had a large deployment of security agencies. Now, these security agencies, unfortunately, in one of the videos, for instance, saw people were asking, why did you allow them to take away this ballot box? But again, somebody was saying, quickly called my attention that the people who came, they came with guns. The security agencies deployed at the polling booths we're not allowed to carry guns based on, I think, the law. So that's another thing probably maybe for a review in the future. But by and large, when you look at this election, I believe that there are a lot of lessons to learn in the course of this election. And I believe that INEC will also must now insist further in terms of the placement of the ballot boxes. In some area, we saw compliance in terms of trying to guarantee the sacredness or the sanctity of, the secrecy, because we operate an open secret system, the secrecy of the ballots in areas where there have been this too open display of it. Some people, display in such a manner that the voting pattern could be compromised. Some vigilant voters actually resisted that and said, look, you have to place it properly. In some areas, it was compromised in such a way that those who are doing the vote buying were able to substantially monitor those who are doing, were voting. It's a shame that the issue of vote buying is now become a serious cost on our democracy. It's a huge cost. Vote buying is now a huge cost on our democracy, in the sense that, Chamberlain, 2 billion naira will give you 200,000 votes at 10,000 naira. Now, that's, I tweeted something a few days, yesterday, and I said that the candidate who's likely to win the 2023 general election is likely to get a minimum of 15 million votes. And at 10,000, and that is going to be at 150 billion naira. That is the sad stage of our country. My only worry is just that the issue of vote buying, there are penalties stipulated in the Electoral Act for vote buying. It may not be a substantial ground for nullification of election or making making an election to be discarded or something like that.
Let me take this back to
provision in the Electoral Act for
let me take this back to Mr. Ogutwase. Major points you have raised there, and I mean, you've commended the process in terms of technology and all of that, but sadly we're talking about vote buying. At this point in our democracy, we've come quite a long way. So, Mr. Ogutwase, just to perhaps speak more on this issue of vote buying, because we need to learn lessons. We're building up to Osun and the big elections. Just how did this play out? Because for Honorable Olatomoso, you said he didn't witness any. So for the places you say there was vote buying, how sophisticated was it? How exactly did they perpetrate this?
The mechanism is like this. The polling, where you cast your vote, the cubicle is placed in a way that is visible to all the observers. They ask them to look at it, so they see who you are going to vote for. A way they recognize who you are voting for is the location of the parties on the ballot paper. If you are close to the top, they know you are voting for APC. You are at the bottom, they know you are voting for SDP and so on and like that. Then they display it for people to see. Then they fold it and then go and drop it in the box. The agent that is there, the money agent, then writes down the name of the person who has just voted and who has just voted for them. And then they direct the person to go to a particular location away from the polling booth to go and collect their money. This is how they do it. Now, I went to some polling units and I asked the security men that the way these states are positioned compromised the integrity of this election. And also, the security men, what are you doing about these people who have deflated their ballots? But what they say is that they have done their best, but that's the way the people want it. So in effect, there was not really any effort made by the security people and by any people to actually hold down these vote buying tendencies. They did not do anything about that. That is the shame of the election.
Well, Mr. Ogutwase, was your party involved in vote buying?
We did not give money out to anybody. Because we didn't believe in giving money to people.
Okay.
Where I was, we did not give any money.
But you don't know about other places, because the word out there is it was highest bidder. Some were offering 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, and eventually the highest bidder took the day. So do you know about others? Can you vouch for other polling units or other members of your party that they didn't engage in see and buy, as they call it?
I am not aware we did that. And the chairman of strategy committee who are going to do it, I will know. I don't know about that. This see and buy was peculiar to one particular party, and everybody in Ekiti State are fully aware of it. The bid rate was 10,000 naira per vote. Everybody in Ekiti State is aware of this.
Well, which party is that?
The APC people. Well, they are the people who had money.
We have the APC here to respond to that. So let me go back to Honorable Olatomoso. And I'd like to pick it up from the placement of the ballot box. And this issue has been raised time and again. Did you have concerns about the placement? It's meant to be an open, secret ballot. But from what I even witnessed myself, the boxes were placed in such a way that others can see how you voted. You can just easily fold your paper the other way and then show before you put it in the box. Did you have concerns about that? And perhaps that might have also aided vote buying. That's for you, Honorable.
I think the network is bad here. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Honorable Olatomoso, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay,
I can hear you loud and clear.
You can go ahead with your response.
Listening to our auntie, it's like we were insulting the
So we lost the beginning of what you were saying. So if you could just recap for us. Oh, it looks like the connection is failing on us. We'll come back to Honorable in a moment, but let me go back to Mr. Ariyodare Atoye. This is an election that we had hoped would paint a picture of what to expect in 2023, essentially, with the technology, but this issue of vote buying. I know we've talked a lot about this. A lot of the work is perhaps in the hands of the political parties first, who are set to induce the voters, but who do you think should have done what during that election?
Well, I want to say that I think the functions streamlined and defined for every institution and agency involved in the Ekiti governorship election. The police force, the army, INEC, and the politicians themselves, the electorate, all have one role or the other to play. The electorate were meant to come to cast their votes. The INEC officials were meant to ensure that they comply with rules and regulation guiding the election. The police officers, the soldiers were meant to protect, the people and ensure that everything, runs smoothly. And also the politicians were meant to ensure that the election was not disrupted, either compromised. But like I said, we did something before the election, I think, which was covered by channels. We went ahead and did this campaign on the issue of vote buying. Now, I realized that. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, it wasn't sufficient enough to tell the voters not to sell their vote. Not sufficient enough. It's important that we are able to put cost to that vote. And Chamberlain and my brother in the studio, I came up with this ingenious calculation. I think in 2015, we did a very solid campaign in Osun 4 years ago, which we are still going to return to Osun. And we put the cost of a vote at, currently, the minimum wage is 30,000, and we put at 1.44 million naira. Now, the whole reason why we decided to let the voters to know that the cost of one vote is 1.44 million naira, for them to understand that the 5,000, 10,000 they are collecting is actually worthless. How did we arrive at 1.44 million naira as the cost of a vote? Is when you calculate the minimum wage is 30,000 naira, the baseline, and you multiply it by 48 months that a politician will spend in the office, and that is the minimum you are expected as a Nigerian of a voting age to have benefited, either by way of employment. So it gives 1.44 million. So it's what we've seen as a pattern of enslavement and a serious cost on our democracy. So what we need to do is to deepen this campaign, because I realized that, and we also saw instances of people who rejected vote buying, because when we were in the market, we told some of the people, and they are listening to us. They listened to the calculation. Some of them made some resolution that they are not going to sell their vote, that is worthless. Actually, based on the way we explained to them.
All right, Dari. Just pardon me. We need to go to break, but we'll return and continue our focus on the Ekiti elections. That will be in just a moment. So, gentlemen, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. We're still reviewing the Ekiti governorship elections 2022. We're taking reactions from main actors in that election. We still have with us Mr. Ben Oguntoashi, Chairman, Strategy Committee, Sheguni Campaign Organization. We also have Mr. Taiwo Olatubosun, Director, Media and Publicity, BAO Campaign, and Mr. Ariyodare Atoye, Executive Director at Dr. Goal Initiative, who just put a staggering cost to one vote, if you do the calculations in terms of vote buying, at 1.44 million. But now I'd like to go to Mr. Dare Olatubosun. You said earlier that you didn't get any report of vote buying, but during the election, I wonder if you watched Channels Television's coverage. Just an hour before the police, the DIG, Mr. Kukumo, denied getting any report of vote buying as you have done. The EFCC arrested certain individuals in the video that we have now been showing since the beginning of the program. Isn't it curious for you, and are you not concerned that the DIG denied getting any report of vote buying, even though the EFCC had made an arrest, you know, in the mix of the whole process? Aren't you concerned? Shouldn't the government security agencies have been working together?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like I said earlier, where I voted, there was no issue of vote buying there, and the process.
Mr. Olatubosun, the audio through to him is frozen yet again. We'll try to address that. But let me now come to you, Mr. Ben Oguntuashi. You talk about vote buying and the concern about how rampant it was and all of that. But there are reports that indeed your candidate is broke, and that's why he was unable to indulge in vote buying himself. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't think we should use that as a yardstick. The perception or the assumption that somebody is broke, we cannot use, because it is the direction we actually ought to be moving our democracy is in the direction of not doing vote buying. Well, if we are now trying to find negative characterization for somebody not do vote buying as being the consequence of being poor or broke and so on, then we are not helping this democracy, because we know the consequences.
I believe it is necessary.
We know the
financial wherewithal to indulge in vote buying. He would have, wouldn't he?
I don't believe Shegoni would have. Shegoni is somebody who is very high on moral and on morality and on ethics. He believes in service to the people with a lot of passion. He does not believe in all this inducement. As a matter of fact, he works so hard to make sure that inducement was not part of what we do. And that is why we championed the campaign against the Boko Sebe and all those other negative attributes of vote buying, stomach infrastructure, all of that. We actually championed the campaign against that in APC. That to tell the people that it's more important to follow your conscience so that you can get your freedom than for you to be induced with money. Because we all know, if whatever you pay today, the 10,000 naira that people collect, there does not guarantee that pensioners are going to be paid their gratuity. It does not guarantee that employees are going to pay their salary, civil servants, and so on and so forth. It does not guarantee infrastructure. And we have seen evidence of how terrible this can be on our politics since this vote buying attribute was actually introduced by first AC, then APC, and so that the people actually have been doing it extensively since 2014.
Let's return to Mr. Olatubosun. Mr. Olatubosun, are you back now?
Yes, I'm back. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
So what I was saying is that all the security agencies, the electoral agencies, I expect that they should work together in the real sense of it to ensure that we improve on our electoral process. But the point I've made here, which I wish to emphasize on, is that we do not involve in vote buying. And for those that were arrested, possibly I cannot identify those people. And from what I read, I learned that it was the SDP people that actually got involved in that. And let me say this, even before election, they raised money openly.
Hold on, you said it was the SDP people that indulged in vote buying. Do you have any evidence? I thought you said that there was no vote buying where you voted.
That's what I'm saying.
So where did you get your information?
I'm saying that from the analysis made by Big Ben, it shown that they had a mind of doing things like that, because the way he analyzed it, what happened in his word, the way it was carried out, it means that he knew about those things. But as far as our party is concerned, I cannot analyze what he analyzed because we were not involved, and there was no report of any form of vote buying because we don't have the money. Where do we get such money? And that is the truth. And for a party that has campaigned around 177 wards in Ekiti, you cannot compare such a party with a party that is not having a structure. And you cannot compare such a party with a party that came up within the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And you cannot compare such a party with a party that you cannot specifically have their manifestos of what they actually told people. And again, let me say this. When I said it's an afterthought and a way to cover up their failed over-bloated strength everywhere in Ekiti. We have a government in place in Ekiti that have touched life in the area of infrastructural development and good governance. And these are very, very important. And people should come to the reality of the advancement and improvement in our electoral process rather than relying on other backdoor approach, which used to be when they participated in elections. Again, I ask, which election have they ever won? Which election? Let's be very honest with ourselves. And the idea of people just coming in a day or two and want to stampede Ekiti to do their wishes and biddings cannot work. I believe Ekiti people have spoken and freely spoken. Each of us has, has a vote, and our vote is equal to each other. You have a vote, Big Ben, I have a vote. Likewise, an artisan of the street has a vote. A farmer has a vote. So, and they speak for themselves. They are free. People are free to express their mind. People are free to perform their franchise. And if you want to impose the interest of our individual on them, then it's like we are the one trying to cause crisis. But each of vote is not enough for you or for your party to accept that the popular vote in a democracy rules the day. And our party, the credibility of our Ekiti people, again, they want one of their own. They want a homegrown person. And maybe we are not getting the language of Ekiti people this time around. And they want continuity. Continuity is not just in a way. That is what we have never had in Ekiti State. And for the first time, the Ekiti people has broken the genes through their votes. And we should.
Well, it does look like Honorable Taiwo Olatubosun is frozen again. But let's go to Mr. Ariodare Atoye, who is the Executive Director of Adopt a Goal Initiative. Well, we saw in that video, I don't know if you were able to see the clip, pictures of EFCC officials getting involved. So it did look like this vote buying was anticipated. It would seem that since the last maybe 2 or 3 election cycles in Ekiti, this has now become a very troubling issue. And we've now seen the involvement of EFCC officials. How effective would you say their introduction was?
You're not hearing.
Hello, Mark, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, can you
I can hear you loud and clear. If you can hear me, please go ahead.
Hear the question.
Okay, I was asking about the introduction of EFCC officials. I mean, vote buying has become rather a worrying concern in so many election cycles right now. I think it was one of the worrisome aspects for many people in the Ekiti elections. So with the introduction of EFCC officials now in the polls, how effective would you say that they coming into the elections have been?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oops. Looks like there's a connection problem between Abuja and Zoom. Maybe I should send this back to Lagos. I don't know if any of the other guests can hear me. Mr. Oguntuashe, can you hear me?
I'm not sure they can, but let's try and see if it works from here. Dare, for you, she was asking, has the introduction of EFCC officials helped in any way to prevent vote buying?
Chamberlain, I like that question. Before coming to Ekiti, I had a meeting with the EFCC. The chairman was not around. I met with the secretary of the commission with our theme and the coalition of other CSCs. And we tried to tell them that they have to come to Ekiti to make their presence count and probably to effect necessary arrests. We've seen in some videos that some persons were arrested. The only way to make a statement is for the EFCC to ensure a diligent prosecution of the people arrested in line with the Electoral Act. And because we have Osun coming and we have the general elections coming, and EFCC must act. And also, we are also going to return to Abuja and have another meeting with the EFCC based on some of the things we've seen to make further suggestions. Because I recall that in the meeting we had with the EFCC, they also asked for our own suggestions, which we are going to make available to them. They do not have the personnel to be able to cover every polling unit, every ward, every local government, and we don't expect that because they want to get involved in election, they have to go on a recruitment drive. But there is a way out which we are going to discuss with the commission, probably to working with volunteers and how to effect necessary arrests.
Let me add this to your response. Just hang on. The chairman of INEC, while he was speaking with stakeholders in the Ekiti, I think your different groups were there as well, on this question of vote buying. He says, quote, clearly, vote buying is a threat to our electoral democracy. To discourage the practice, we changed the configuration of our polling units to bring the ballot boxes closer to the voting cubicles and also banned the use of mobile phones and photographic devices by voters while in the voting cubicle. And then they also went ahead, he said they went ahead and collaborated with the EFCC and ICPC. So did you see this change that INEC spoke about regarding the ballot boxes on the day?
Not exactly. I would say, yeah, in some areas, but in most areas where this vote buying took place, of course. One thing is for INEC to give its own directives. Another thing is for people to ensure the vigilance and some of the officials of INEC to ensure that this order was carried out effectively. Sometimes some of those people come to some of these local areas intimidated. They have their fears, they have their concerns, and you see, in an atmosphere of violence sometimes, or the threat of violence, sometimes it's difficult. I think what we ought to have seen is the political parties actually also insisting that those rules must be complied with. Like I said, in some areas, yes, but in a lot of areas that I saw, there was that compromise.
Okay, Mr. Oguntoashe, well, you heard Honorable Latiboso say, no way. He pushed back on some of the allegations that you have made. But the question is, can you then substantiate some of these allegations about vote buying for the APC, of which you accuse them of, when you go to court?
We will do that. We have compiled our evidence, and we are going to present this evidence before the court. We are going to present to the court video evidence, oral evidence, and all electronic evidence, all kinds of evidence that we have garnered from the field. In fact, places where during the election the posters of Bao were all displayed all over the place during election, which is against the Electoral Act, all of these are going to make available at the court. But the reason
he also says that your candidate couldn't have just shown up days before the election and expect to bamboozle the people because their own candidate, he says, is a homeboy, and that you didn't stand a chance.
I have tried to refrain from engaging Honorable Latiboso in the kind of verbal assault that he tried to launch at me to provoke with me. Because he made a statement, for example, that these people never won election. I wonder how he got to serve as Commissioner for Information under Shegun, who has now said never won an election. Now, his pushback, he knows deep down within him that it is very, very faulty. He's talking of Biodo Ebanje as an homeboy. Nobody denies that. But you see, more homeboy than Shegun is. That is the question that he continually tried to avoid raising. I don't like this whole idea of disparaging ourselves because things are either not for us or against us. I've been trying to avoid that. But he knows that deep down, he's not telling the truth. I don't want to engage him in any verbal war here.
Honorable Latiboso, clearly, that sounds like you biting the fingers that fed you.
Has SDP ever won election in Ekiti? Big Ben, he's not.
What about the man behind the SDP? You served under him, didn't you, as he just told us?
Commissioner for Information.
Has SDP ever won election in Ekiti State? As SDP came on about 1 month or 2 months ago.
But Honorable
That's what I
Latiboso,
meant.
it's not an amorphous body. There's a face behind the party. Isn't it the face? That's who the people go for.
In most cases, when the faces, the party is what people see on the ballot paper. That's the party, and that's very, very important. And I'm sorry to say this, it's the truth of the matter. When you form an emergency party, leaving one party to another within a space of 6 months, you cannot, everybody cannot just live with you. And you should not expect any magic. And that's exactly what I'm trying to say. You can't compare SDP, a party that was concocted or brought together within the last 2 months. Let me cite, for example, some of the personalities in the party left APC about a week ago. And the truth of the matter is that what kind of magic do they want to perform? I know what I'm saying. But if the Ben is taking it personal, I'm sorry about that. But the truth must be established. And what I'm saying in essence is that APC government in the Ekiti state has performed. 2, the credibility of the candidate is equally very important. And the people are very credible people. They want people, they want a party that is consistent. They are tired of having this, having that every 4-year rituals. And I'm not attacking any personality here. I'm only trying to let the people know that SDP was nowhere compared to what we have in APC as a party.
Well, Honorable Olatiboso.
Must be consistent.
Honorable Olatiboso, as Chamberlain said, it was the face behind the party, not necessarily the party, because you keep talking about how the SDP has not won an election. Indeed, the story was, before the election, was that Segun Oni was the darling of the people of Ekiti because they thought that he was going to replicate the policies that he did while he was governor of the state earlier on in the civil service. And indeed, he was the man to beat in that election. And it was the vote buying that marred his chances.
Thank you very much. And when you compare that with 7.5 years of APC in Ekiti state, the gap will be, the people are there to judge. We're in the People's Parliament during that election, and I believe that if you look at the policy of Segun Oni when he was governor, when you compare it to the physical changes, physical development under the administration of APC, you will know that what I'm saying, that I'm still right. 2, when we talk about faces, let's take Ifaki for example. Segun Oni is from Ifaki. We have a serving senator there. And we have other personalities there that are faces of APC there as well. So if they are talking about vote buying, or they expect them to win without disruption and without, because it was the question you asked, that what were they expecting? Maybe they said they were expecting, they thought they would win, but they didn't win. And why didn't they win? It is because of the faces of people.
Did you see those videos making the rounds about people who sold their votes, accusing your party of buying their votes for 10,000 naira?
I did not see that. I did not see that. Honestly speaking, with all sense of honor, I did not see that. Our party we're not involved in vote buying. And honestly, I can't be everywhere. And as a matter of fact, what I've told you here is just the truth, nothing but the truth. We do not involve ourselves in vote buying. We could have gotten such money to do.
All right. Even though you say you're not everywhere, but you speak as though you're everywhere. All right, well, gentlemen, we have to thank you.
I can't be everywhere. That's what I say, I can't be everywhere.
Okay. Taiwo has said that SDP is a new party. I wonder how old APC was when they took over government from Jonathan's PDP in 2015. We need to go back to history and understand what we are talking about here.
All right. So on that note, we have to thank you all for coming on. Ben Oguntuanse is the chairman, Strategy Committee, Segun Oni Campaign Organization. We had Honorable Taiwo Olatiboso, who is the Director of Media and Publicity, BAO Campaign, former Deputy Speaker of Ekiti State, and then Ariyo Dari Atoye, Executive Director of Adopt a Goal Initiative. He observed that election and also voted in the election. Gentlemen, thank you all for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll still talk about some political matters in a moment. Don't go away.